Every search term falls somewhere on the spectrum, and I think there's a difference between managing keywords and actually managing buyer intent. How's it going, everybody? Gene Villanos here, another episode of the PPC Cave. Today we're on episode 125. That's crazy. We're almost at 150, which means we're almost at 200. But before we get into the actual episode, let's talk about Opteo. Opteo has been our sponsor, and they help in every single facet of my business. I do a lot of client analysis, a lot of client optimization for Google Ads, not only Google Ads, but for Meta and Microsoft, Bing, all these other PPC platforms. And they always bring the data with their chat function. And it just is one of the best things that I can prescribe to any PPC manager in need of more time back. And if you want to create confident and timely optimizations, you cannot go wrong with Opteo. Go to www.opteo.com/ThePPCCave. Go down to the chat box, say, hey, I came from the PPC Cave. Would you please upgrade my 14-day trial to a 28-day trial? And they will do so. And if you need help setting up your accounts, let me know. I will do it or help you for free. Jumping into this episode, the title of episode 125 today is how to decide if a search term should be negative. How to decide if a search term should be negative. And I think we've all kind of gone through this. If you've been doing PPC, you understand that there are search terms in Google Ads. It's kind of the basic premise of what we do. Regardless if it's a shopping campaign, PMAX, or search, you're going to be sifting through search terms. And maybe you've kind of like looked through a search term report and thought, well, this is technically related to my business. If the business is e-commerce or lead gen, and you're like, I'm just going to leave it alone. And then after weeks or maybe even, months, you see there's hundreds of dollars spent on these, or maybe even more on these search terms, and you're looking to the column to the right or to the left under conversions and there's zero. I think quietly, if you don't understand what buying intent is, or just in general what the human psychology philosophy of search is, you're going to be put in this spot, and then down the road, you're going to be paralyzed, unable to create a decision because you're like, this is actually relevant to my business or the organization. But you cannot confuse relevance with intent to learn more about the business or intent to purchase. I've been reading the book Sapiens by Noah Harari, and it's one of the things that I've been doing in 2026 is just kind of learn more about stuff outside of PPC that just interest me, and just kind of how humans have gone through time and elevated themselves. I think you could begin to recognize patterns, and I think survival in general is because we learn how to distinguish things that maybe look similar but required two complete different responses. And, down back in the whatever times, maybe a chimp or an animal sees a berry and eats it. But then down the road, another chimp looks at a berry, same size, same shape, but is poisonous and eats it. After time, you'll realize, okay, X berry is good, Y berry bad. And I think that's the same way we should look at Google Ads. Even though some things look similar or related to your business, it could be really, really bad if you see it throughout the time that you're managing the account and don't do anything about it. Or better yet, you are able to recognize beforehand so that it just doesn't drain your spend, and you can understand that this is related but not intentional. Point one, Google's job versus your job. I think we all know that Google's job is to match searches to keywords, and our job is kind of to determine if those keywords that we're receiving from Google is relevant or actually worth paying for. Just because someone searched something related to your business doesn't mean they're looking to hire that business. So I'm going to give an example here. I've been working in the pest control business for lead gen. So someone might be searching something related to pest control, but that does not mean they're looking to hire a pest control company. So that is the first point. Understand what your job is versus what Google Ads as an infrastructure is. Next is understanding that you have to understand that there are about 4 types of search intent. There's one type is you're basically ready to hire if we're talking about lead gen, or you're ready to purchase if we're talking about e-commerce. That's what we want. Second are people trying to do it themselves, and this is primarily going to be a lead gen episode because, like I said, we're kind of working through lead gen accounts, and it's something that kind of has been top of mind for me. So next is DIY intent. Are these people trying to hire someone out or actually fix the issue, create the service, do the thing themselves? Third is research intent. Are these people just researching? Or are they even, it's not necessarily bad, but they may be just a little early, right? Fourth is that gray area. We might need a little bit more context on what this search term is. So I want to kind of spend some time here now that we know the 4 types of search intent. First is the hiring intent. We're going to use pest control as the example here. These are basically your dream searches. Some of the example queries could be pest control near me, or a specific exterminator attached to, rodent exterminator, ant exterminator, mice exterminator, or even, the action versus the company. So rodent removal company, or ant control services, termite treatment company. This person has decided, I want someone else to solve this and I'm not touching whatever that is. So that is what we want. That is a qualified search. So that's what we're trying to scope the keywords towards. Next is the DIY intent. So if you begin to see some of the search terms read rat predator urine, rodent expanding foam, sound to scare away mice, plug-in to scare away bees or to keep hornets away. Every one of these searches are related to pest control, but this is by far one of the most blatant, obvious negative keywords that you can create so that you don't incur spend and not get any conversions out of it. I think none of them indicate that they're actually looking for a service. It's more so indicating that they want to solve this issue themselves, or at least research towards the issue so that they can make an informed decision if they can do it themselves or outsource the job to a company or service. And I think there is a place for this, the DIY intent, but I think it's after you've established the lead gen campaigns that have gotten the most conversions. And if you're looking to go a little bit more high funnel, where it's a little bit less intentional because you've covered the basis in your niche, in your service area, or in your product that is low to the funnel where you've gotten conversions. And I think this is actually a good separate campaign or separate ad group to test, just because you could kind of funnel them down from high to low. But out the gate, if you're trying to establish a lead gen campaign with conversions, I would not start with a campaign or ad group that only focuses on DIY intent. Next is research intent. And if we believe that DIY intent is a full stop, black and white, this should be a negative keyword. Research intent, if it was stoplights where DIY intent is red, I would consider research intent almost at that yellow, where you have to it's not necessarily bad, but like I mentioned before, they might be a little early. Some examples of this, if there's any reviews attached to the anchor keyword, so like pest control reviews, or even the actual company Joe Bob's pest control reviews, or Joe Bob's pest control versus Jimmy Bob's pest control, like the versus vs in between, or even having the word comparison, or things like that. Sometimes these convert and sometimes they don't, and I think that's where we have to defer to the data to create that informed decision if it is negative. And sometimes it's going to be we don't know, and it's going to be, okay, wait till we get more clicks, till we get more spend to be able to actually qualify this as a negative keyword search term. So for this, it is a little tricky, but if you haven't established or understand what a good search term is, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to negate those that are just relevant but low intent. And then the last one is gray area. I think some of these searches might need a little bit more context, like termite treatment. Or, I want to learn about termites, but there's not enough search term in the actual query to kind of round off like an idea of like what they want. They might just be searching ant removal, or just two phrase, three phrase, very broad. Don't automatically make these negatives just because you have to look at and see, there are going to be some industries where that's all you need to search. It might be a very complex industry where it only needs two or three broad search terms and you're actually going to get conversions off of that. So that's where you look at the conversions versus clicks, or even the cost per acquisition or cost per conversion for something like that. Then you could bucket it under negative, or just let it run in your search term report. But yeah, the next point is we have to understand and walk through real search terms, right? So go and bring up your client search term report and go line by line. Opteo does a really good job of this. I don't do much of this anymore, so I kind of have a little bit more space and capacity to think holistically of how I do this, just because I'm not in the accounts as much. I'm usually just doing negative keyword and search term analysis through Opteo, which I think is the best part of Opteo, one of the best parts. So look at the line by line search term report and see, okay, rat predator urine. We used this example earlier. Maybe the person wants to buy a product, so that needs to be a negative keyword. Rodent expanding form. You're looking for material. That's definitely going to be a negative keyword, still under the DIY bucket. Plugin, to keep hornets or bees away. That's someone looking for an electronic repellent. Negative keyword. That is not what you sell if you are a rodent pest control company selling services. And then you go through the research. Okay, we have reviews, and maybe someone that's searching with reviews attached to it: pest control review, ant removal review, mouse control reviews, or even, like I said, Jim Bob's pest control review. It may be a customer, but it's going to need data. You're going to need more information. They might be reviewing your services versus another supplier or another local vendor. But I wouldn't count it out yet. But the only time that I would count it out is if somehow your product pages lead to these type of search terms and keywords that are really getting the most spend, and then all your other keywords that you would consider highly intentional are barely getting any cost or spend on them, then this is the only time I would probably make these research keywords negative, and then perhaps even move them into another ad group or campaign. But what we're looking for is, more of that great, like locational plus service keywords. Those are great. Those are exactly what we're after. So it's like, I don't know, Denver County pest control. That has a location. Usually, if you're local services, you'll be working within a specific mileage radius, and it's attached to the actual service that you provide. So that's very highly qualified. That needs to be in there not only as a search keyword, but as a search term. Termite treatment. This could be something that is probably worth testing, but you have the actionable there, and you have the specific type of service there. Termite treatment, mice removal near me. Those types of search terms are gold. That's what you need to kind of build off of. Even if you want to get more of those search terms in, make sure that your landing page reflects that. Maybe even slip in some broad match keywords in there so that you get as much of that kind of query sculpted into that ad group or campaign. The framework that I use, and this is the last or second to the last point here, is when I'm reviewing search terms, I ask a couple questions. I ask for, would this person rather buy a product or hire a company? If they would rather purchase a product, probably a negative keyword, for lead gen. Question 2 is, would I personally call a business after typing this? If you're not going to search that way yourself, doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to be a negative keyword, but that's a good framework to kind of keep in your head. Would I call a business after I type this and search this on Google? And then, of course, question 3 is, has this converted before? Data will beat any opinion, and it could be research intent or product. But if data says in this particular niche, somehow it slipped in 2 clicks and someone is purchasing through a research intent keyword or a DIY intent keyword, then, data beats opinions. Leave it in there, at least just leave it in there and don't make it negative. Question 4, could this become a customer later? And sometimes we need more data. Sometimes we need a little bit more remarketing. It's very rarely that someone just gets on Google, goes to your landing page, converts or purchases. So don't over negative an account. Don't make too many negative keywords and choke up the traffic, where Google Ads works best, where the traffic is just free flowing. So next, the last point, this isn't just about pest control. Yes, it is primarily for lead gen, but you could actually get, e-commerce type of advice or insights from this episode also. But this applies everywhere when it comes to lead gen. It applies for roofing, plumbing, HVAC, so for roofing, how to patch a roof. That's someone trying to do DIY. Or, Charlie Varsity shingles, a specific type of shingles. That's someone that's looking for supply or trying to do it themselves. Make that negative. For plumbing, unclog a drain, or unclog a drain fluid, liquid. That's someone that is, looking for how to do it themselves versus, emergency plumber, or plumber near me today, something like that. HVAC, AC blowing warm air. That's someone that might be researching or even doing DIY versus AC repair near me. Law firm. Research also encompasses who, how, what, why, what happens after DUI, versus DUI attorney near me. So these are very relevant, but the intent with just a couple keywords make the largest difference if you're going to spend and not get conversion. So to kind of wrap it up, some of the biggest mistakes is assuming that relevance is, equal or is equal to the quality in Google Ads. That's huge. Maybe the second point is adding negatives without enough data. If you have 1 or 2 clicks, it might be premature if you're making that negative keyword and everything around that search term actually checks out. And even ignoring search intent or the psychology of the way someone is searching, that could be another mistake. But yeah, I think you have to understand that keywords are not what's converting. It's people. So you definitely need Sorry about that. You definitely need a little bit of more context and a little bit more of data to create these negative keywords. Final takeaway, every search term falls somewhere on the spectrum. It's going to be informational, DIY, research, comparison, or are they ready to hire? Your goal isn't just to get more traffic or clicks. It's to buy clicks from people that are ready to convert, to have high intentionality. And I think there's a difference between managing keywords and actually managing buyer intent. But yeah, this has been another episode of the PPC Cave. Don't forget about our sponsor, Opteo. Upgrade your 14-day trial to 28-day trial. You go to www.opteo.com/thePPCCave. We release every Monday, 12 a.m. Mountain Time. If you have any questions, just comment on any of our channels or email us at theppccave@gmail.com. If you want management or consultation from me, go to www.tempest59, that's Tempest, the number 5, the number 9.com. Work with your boy, Gene Villanos. And if there's nothing else, bye for now.